So it is finally the start of a new season, and that means that every team has new goals, a clean slate, and higher expectations for the new season. So I've put together a list of my New Year's resolutions for every AFL team. So for these New Year's resolutions, they're a bit different for every team. Some of them are standings based or ladder based, and other ones are just things that I think they should really try and achieve in the next year. So starting off with the Adelaide Crows, what I think they should do is they should play the kids in the mid. And what I mean by that is they've got an aging midfield, or a couple of aging midfielders, I should say. They've got Rory Laird and they've got Matt Crouch, who, Rory Laird especially, I don't think is best 23. And if he is, he should be a half-backer. They've brought in Peatling, they've got Rochelle, they've got Rankin. Like, there's a lot of young, quality midfielders in that team, and I just don't think there's any room for these old guys anymore. And Jake Saligo is one that I really expect to take off next year, and then him along with Dawson and those other guys, it's going to be scary next year. And there's no point in holding back all these young kids to let Roy Laird play or let Matt Crouch rack up disposal for another couple of years and it not result for anything in the future. So for the Brisbane Lions, I think this one's pretty obvious, and it's just finding that Joe Danaher replacement. And they've got players that can do that. Obviously, Logan Morris was, in that role, and he'll probably take more of the responsibility. Obviously, Eric Hipwood's going to get the number one guy, week in and week out. But they brought in Sam Day, who was delisted from Gold Coast, and he's a quality player, although he can barely ever get on the park. He's definitely someone that could get a role or could get a run on this team, as well as Darcy Fort, who was obviously the backup for Oscar McInerney and played that pivotal role in the grand final after McInerney went down. We could see them maybe splitting ruck time because Oscar McInerney's a great mark, so we might see him go forward a little bit. Obviously, Darcy Fort can do it, but it'll be very interesting to see who they decide to pick, and obviously, by the end of the year, who will be that number one or number two forward. And one other thing I did want to say with Brisbane is that the last two premiers, both Geelong and Collingwood, missed the finals the next year. So I think just a little resolution for Brisbane is just to not be that team, to still be able to compete and play well even after their high in 2024. So Carlton is next, and for them it's really just about getting healthy. And obviously that's not really something that is in their control, but Carlton are very good when healthy, and there were a lot of players who missed games in the back end of the season, which really cost them or caused them to slip down the ladder. Getting players like Doherty back and Sard missed time at the end of the year. You had Curnow missing time. Walsh had the back injuries. Mackay was missing time. Wiedering missed at the end of the year. It was really just a Paddy Cripps show pretty much every week. So having a full season out of these guys is obviously something they hope for, but it is hard and it's pretty much out of their control. So next up is Collingwood. And for Collingwood, I think that they've just got to not be afraid to drop these veterans, especially the likes of Mason Cox and Tom Mitchell. I don't think they're good enough to be in the squad, and I think they've got to be okay with dropping that. Then there's also Steel Sidebottom, Jeremy Howe, and also Scott Pendlebury, and I think that they've just got to be okay with dropping these guys if they're not good enough and playing the younger players. Because at the end of the day, it's about winning games, and it shouldn't be about loyalty to Pendles or loyalty to Sidebottom, even though I think they will be in the best team still, or they'll be good enough to be. If they're not, Collingwood has to be okay with not playing those guys and going towards the younger demographic of players. So next up is Essendon, and as you probably would have guessed, for Essendon, it's just winning a final. It's been 7,665 days as of this recording since they won a final, and it's going to be up at about 8,000 days if they don't win a final this year, which is just absolutely insane. And they've got a decent list to do it. They've got a strong midfield. They've got good defenders. They've got a decent forward line, but they're definitely good enough to potentially make a final and potentially win a final. Next up is Fremantle, and for my New Year's resolution for them, it's to play as good as their list suggests they should. This is a team with arguably 3 All-Australian defenders and a full All-Australian midfield. You've got Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson who can go in the ruck, and they are both top 10, I'd say, maybe even top 8 ruckmen in the entire comp. They've got Caleb Sarong, they've got Andy Brayshaw, they've got Shea Bolton that they've added, and they've got Hayden Young as one of the most dynamic midfielders in the competition. And their forward line can somewhat stack up with the best in the competition as well. They've got Tracy and a miss, and then a great mix of other small and medium forwards. And this team really underachieved last year, so I'm really excited to see what they can do in 2025, and I think that they could potentially go pretty deep in the finals. My New Year's resolution for the Geelong Cats is to try and get these injured players back on the park. So they obviously signed Bailey Smith and also Jack Martin. And these guys are very, very quality players. And Geelong, has a history of being able to turn around these players' careers. So seeing what they can do with Jack Martin and Bailey Smith is something that I'm really, really excited to see. And if they can get these guys in the park, they can go really deep in finals or even win the whole thing. Because this team was 10 points off a grand final last year, and adding Bailey Smith and Jack Martin is just going to add another dynamic to this team. And if they can get healthy, especially Jack Martin, he's got the potential. He's $1 million player at Carlton, and he could be really, really solid and a great addition to that team if he's able to get healthy. And it would also allow Brian Myers to go up the ground a bit more, and their small forwards are already terrific. Next up is Gold Coast, and for the Suns, it's just time to make the finals. It's been long enough. They've been flirting around with it for a number of years now. This is the year to do it. They've got the list for it. They add Rioli, they add John Noble, and they're just very, very solid all around. They have one of the best midfields in the entire comp. You got Rowell, Anderson, Tuke Miller, and Sam Flanders. That is an incredible midfield. That is up there with anyone in the comp. They've got a young list. They've got Mac Andrew in the back line. They've got Ben King in the forward line. This team is just primed to finally make a finals appearance. Damien Hardwick's been preaching about it. This is just the year for Gold Coast. If they can't do it this year, it's just getting depressing at that point. I'm also super excited to see the development of Sam Closey, of Will Graham, and also of Jed Walter as well. The GWS Giants, I think their New Year's resolution should be making it back to the grand final. And for a number of years now, the Giants have been good enough to make the grand final, but have just fallen short pretty much every season. And this season, they were up against Sydney and they were up against Brisbane and managed to choke both games. They could have easily been in a grand final or won the whole thing. And with the list the Giants have, I think the pass mark for them is to make a grand final again. Next up is Hawthorn. And for them, I think their New Year's resolution should be to not be a one-season wonder. So there are a lot of people, not me included, that have been talking about how they don't think that Hawthorn's going to be able to back up what they did in 2024. And I guess that is a little bit of a worry, because they might have overachieved last year, but they add Battle and they also add Barras. And this Hawks team is elite in all areas of the ground. So I don't think it'll be much of a concern. Me personally, I think the Hawks will finish first or second, to be honest. When they get Mitch Lewis back, when they get players like that back, they're just going to be really good. As well as James Sicily, whether he plays back or forward, it's going to be so exciting to watch the development of Jai Newcomb, the development of Will Day. I can't wait to see what they do, but I guess their resolution should be to just keep doing what they're doing and not to fall off. So for the Demons, I just don't want there to be any dramas for their team. I don't think they want that either. There's always been stuff going on, whether it's throwing Max going out, whether it's the whole Petrarca situation, the whole Oliver situation. So if they can have a full year with no dramas, I think that this team can be really, really good. They're strong on all lines. As I've said about a lot of different teams, I'm very bullish on a lot of teams, but having Petrarca and Oliver and Viney and Gawn, no matter what you say, that's a really good midfield. And there are a lot of people that are doubting this Melbourne team and saying that they're going to, be one of the bottom teams in the comp, but they've still got the list and they've got a lot of young guys, and I'm still excited to see what they can do if there's no dramas surrounding them. So for North Melbourne, I think for them it's prioritising the development of their young players like Sheasel and like McKercher, like Davies-Uniacke, and letting them play the midfield time, letting them play the key positions, because they've brought in players like Luke Parker, they've brought in players like Caleb Daniel, which will be good to alleviate that halfback role and allow McKercher to play a more prolific role in the midfield. But I just really don't want to see them falling back on Luke Parker, falling back on Jack Darling in the forward line, and falling back on all of these older veterans. I want them to really lean into these young guys, and although they gave up their first pick for next year in that trade, I still think that this team should prioritise their young players, and I think they'll be able to get wins anyway. Sheasel's a great player, obviously, and he's going to be an absolute superstar of the comp, but these guys are good enough to win now, I think. I don't think they're going to have to wait. So for Port Adelaide, I think their New Year's resolution should be finding that Dan Houston replacement, and whether that is Kane Farrell, or whether that's Josh Sin, or whether that's whoever it is, I think they've got to find who that is and find who it is quick, because there's going to be a lot of ball back there that needs to be picked up, and you want a good distributor off half back, and that's one of the main reasons that Port was good last year. So I could see Kane Farrell really breaking out as an All-Australian caliber player this year if he gets that Dan Houston role, because he's already got a very good role in that backline, and now if he's taken even some of Houston's old ball, he's going to have a lot of opportunity in this Port backline. So for Richmond, obviously the New Year's resolution is playing the kids, but I think obviously they're going to get the number 1 pick next year. They're probably going to finish last, but for them, I think that it should be competitive tanking for them. I want them to be close in games and obviously still lose, but I want them to be entertaining, I want them to be fun, and I want those young players to get the experience of playing in close and important games. And I think the Tigers can do that. I saw a lot of veterans and a lot of leaders on their team that have played in grand finals and won premierships. So there is still a chance they can be competitive, and I think that'll be great for the development of their young guys like Laylor and like Smiley. For the Saints, I think their resolution should be play Mateus Filippo 80% CBAs, play him 85% CBAs. Give that guy every opportunity in that midfield role because he's the future of that team. Same with Darcy Wilson. You got to give these guys the opportunity because they're the future of the team. And if St Kilda wants to get back to the grand finals they were in the 2010s, they're going to need to develop guys like Filippo as much as they possibly can. So the Sydney Swans are an interesting one, but for them, I just don't think they should let their past losses from 2016, 2022, and 24 haunt them in 2025. In 2023, this team took a step back after their 2022 loss, so hopefully in 2025 they can just put it behind them with a new coach and move forward positively. Because this team's always been super fun to watch, and I hate to see Sydney, with the great list that they've got, miss out on finals just because they're still down about their grand final losses. So for West Coast, I think their New Year's resolution should be really to alleviate the pressure on Harley Reid, and I think bringing in Liam Baker and Jack Graham and also Matt Owies does do that, as well as having players like Elliot Yeo, because the thing you'd hate most is for Harley Reid to get tagged all 24 rounds of the season, and you want him to have those big games and really enjoy himself, and you would hate just for him to get tagged out of the game and just not enjoy his second year of footy. Because everyone wants to watch Harley Reid, and even for West Coast, they want to sell tickets, they want to be highly publicised, and the way that they do that is obviously by having Harley Reid play at an elite level for the whole season. And lastly, for the Bulldogs, I think this one's pretty boring, but play Riley Sanders. Luke Beveridge dropped into the VFL, subbed him. Mate, this guy is incredible. He is a great talent, and he should definitely be in the best 23. And if he plays alongside Libba and Treloar and Bontempelli, he's going to develop drastically, and he's going to become such a good player. I really don't want to rest him in the forward line or play him always at the half forward flank. This guy is too good of a talent, and the Dogs should prioritise his development over anything.